Getting set for week number 4 for the Decorah Vikings. Charles City comes to town for homecoming this week. Viking coach Pat Trewin looking back at last week, a 42-6 loss to West Delaware. Coach, just last Friday night, unfortunately, just wasn't your night.
Yeah, we certainly didn't play at our best. They had a lot to do with that. Pretty big, pretty powerful, and they were right on top of things. We could not get off of blocks often enough. You go back and look at the film, and we make some plays in there. We couldn't get off the field. There were some third downs and some fourth downs that we couldn't break free from. We gave them long fields to drive. We kicked the ball, punted the ball fairly well, and we also had some decent returns, but we couldn't get anything going offensively. And when you give them the ball extra times, because of that, it made it pretty tough. You'll tip your cap to them, and then you'll look yourself in the mirror and say, well, what do we got to work on? And so we're working on it this week.
And what are those things you're working on based on last week's performance?
Well, it's still, one, fight off of blocks, make sure you've positioned properly, and then be aggressive through the blocks. And we work on it pretty hard. We have some positions where we're running into people too much, and we have some positions where we're trying to avoid the blockers too much. So we'll work on that defensively. Then offensively, clean up the blocking schemes, go with your rules, make sure you're following your rules, and do so with fidelity. There are places at the point of attack where we got beat at the point of attack and both sides of the ball, and that makes it tough. So, just like the old cliche, you get back to the basics. You get back to how you block and tackle and take on blocks, and make sure you are aligning properly and being really aggressive.
From a technique perspective, you talk about getting off of blocks and getting blockers into defenders. If you're facing guys that are bigger than you, how do you do that?
Well, we do have times where we're going to there are times where we need to block with the opposite shoulder. The main thing is it's communication. You got to know what the guy next to you is doing. If you're expecting a double team and you don't get a double team, it's pretty easy to get blown up. So our communication has got to improve. And then if we do communicate and say, oh, you got this guy solo, then you're going to have to be really aggressive. You got to be lower. You got to keep your base wider. And you got to know that this guy can move on you, and you don't get beat at the worst spot. If you're doing anything, make the guy go the wrong way. So the technique is one thing, but communication is probably the biggest thing this last week.
As you come off of a game like that, where the margin wasn't at a comfortable margin in the wrong direction from your perspective, obviously that can have an effect on a team's confidence. What can you do as a coaching staff to make sure that they keep things as positive as they can as they prepare for a new opponent this week?
Well, you still go back into the game film and you look at both sides of things. Not only do you show some of the plays where you don't do things right, or we don't do them right collectively, or we just don't do them well, but you show, we watched some game film yesterday, and you show where you do some things correct. Even with the score being the way it was, there were several things within the game where our alignment and our assignment is there, and we just we get off the block, but then we couldn't finish a tackle. And so you focus on some of those things, and then you go into it, and the players know, we were probably outsized by 40-50 pounds a man up front, maybe 60 in some cases, and we're not going to face that incredible size a good chunk of the rest of the year. And we go into the next game and the next game, say, hey, we're going to match up pretty well with sizes and strengths and abilities. And anytime you can go on the field, one, you get better. Two, you go out there and you have another chance for a win. Don't look in the rearview mirror too much. Try to keep your eyes on the windshield.
And Charles City comes to town this week. What do you expect out of the Comets?
I expect a very aggressive defense. They blitz a lot. They align in several different alignments. So we're working on try to follow your rules, try to get down to basics on the offensive side of the ball, try to make sure that you're blocking your area because they're going to twist and stunt on you, and and then know that, hey, they're gonna make and win a play or two, and then because they'll be aggressive, but then they'll also be aggressive and take themselves out of it. They've got a running back that's pretty fast. They've got a couple of good linebackers who really make a lot of tackles, and they play pretty hard and physical. And those guys make some plays. We've got to keep the ball in front of us on defense. They haven't scored a lot. They've moved the ball some, but they haven't scored a lot, and we need to keep that going. And then offensively, you stay the course. Just don't get too upset if they make a big play with one of their blitzes, because they're going to blitz themselves out of a play, we hope, within a play or two.
And when you talk about a team that blitzes a lot, you touched on communication earlier. Is that going to be mightily important, especially against a team as aggressive as Charles City defensively?
Yeah, communicating, especially when you're blocking certain plays. You got to have your head up, and you got to be able to point out, okay, this guy's coming here, this guy's coming there. You can see the blitz coming, and then, hey, you get this guy, I got this guy, and we're gonna have to communicate. And then we go back to the technique and the rule of the play. If we're gonna pass block a certain way, you've got to really try your best in the way you're pass blocking, so that you don't leave a hole for the next person to cover. Because when they bring so many people, we better get the inside guys blocked first. And then if you're not blocking anybody, you got to go help somebody later. So there's a lot of communication, but then there's also fidelity to your technique.
All right, Coach, hopefully you can get back on the winning track, make it a happy homecoming this week. We wish you best of luck. Keep your kids healthy.
Thank you very much, Darren.
Pat Trewin, head coach of the Decorah Vikings in Charles City for Decorah Homecoming 2022.